Our world is lost in unnecessary fear and hurt. Our systems seem scientifically engineered to make you small, powerless, and always waiting for the next great leader who will fix the problems around us. Worse, we're witnessing neighbor versus neighbor while warfare breaks out around our family tables. But you have access to a spirit, a strength that enlarges and empowers you. Even better, you don't need to wait for the next big movement. You can heal the world. It's time for governance by grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. Hey, Jim. Good to see you today.
Good to be seen.
We have such an incredible opportunity today. I have never spoken to someone who has been a candidate for federal office, let alone vice presidential candidate for federal office. And today we get to speak to Spike Cohen, who I know you know, and who I know from seeing his name on the ballot. How's that for full disclosure here? But This is a guy who's making waves. Founder and president of You Are the Power, and as I mentioned, Libertarian vice presidential candidate in the 2020 election. Let's welcome Spike Cohen. Good morning.
No one told me that there was going to be a church background. Like you sent me all these notes. You sent me a link to get on here and an idea of the background of what we were going to. No one said a thing. Hold on a second. Thank you so much for having me. Go ahead.
I'll just take you out until you get your background sorted there. Although I love Birdie. He's cool.
Well, thank you. Everyone loves Birdie, but this is not the thematic.
You know, I want something
it was
over my shoulder.
Bill, you were supposed to put that in the memo.
Oh, my bad.
Actually, we have to fault Spike. It's almost as if he hasn't watched the show. Like he could have, come with something, right? He could have come with a backdrop.
I've listened to the show, so excuse me for not knowing the aesthetic.
There you go. He listens on the
every
podcast.
show that I have. There we go. Hold on.
We're very visual. It's important that our.
I hope
so. It's not evident
out in post because I can't. People think that this is here. Let's get here.
No, you're a master of technology, among other things. Look at that, wow. Jim. He can make his background zoom.
There we go.
I feel.
There we go.
Very humble right now.
There we go. Now we need organ music.
Thanks,
to go along
Bill.
with it.
Organ music, yes.
Thanks, Bill. Jim, great to be here on Gracearchy.
Oh yes, that.
So if people that were listening, like you normally do, they're going to have to come to YouTube just to see how this all went down. It's a beautiful background, by the way. Very.
Thank you.
This is becoming we should probably get more solemn and serious now, right?
Yeah, we should. Yes, definitely.
I started that way, but I would appreciate you catching up. Yes.
Spike, how do you get to the position that you end up running for vice president of the United States? Let's start there.
Oh man. It depends on how early you want to start, but I think from a political standpoint, where I started from was I actually started in the business world. A lot of people have said, I can tell someone's lying to me when they'll say, I've been following you for many, many years, at least 7 or 8 years now. And I'm like, no, you haven't, because no one knew who I was 7 or 8 years ago. I was in the business world. I was always in the small business startup world. I started my first company back in 1998, right before, shortly before my 17th birthday. And I've been in business ever since. That was my thing. I didn't even really care much about politics until getting into my early mid-20s. And shortly after that, I realized that I was a libertarian, but I still wasn't into politics. I was into making money. And what happened, and we can get into more details, but basically what happened was a very pivotal moment in my life, which was my diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, led me to really take a look and examine at my life of what did I want to do with the rest of my life. It was kind of a wake-up call. And in retrospect, it was in many ways, it was a moment of grace and a mixed blessing, a blessing in disguise. It's taken me, it's only in the last, I'd say less than a year that I've been able to truly say that, because I wouldn't wish MS on my worst enemy, but it forced me to really take a look at how I was living my life and what kind of fulfillment and purpose I needed in it, and what my legacy that I wanted when I was no longer here. And that led me into getting more and more into libertarian messaging and activism. And ultimately that led to my running for an office I did not think I was going to win. I thought I was just going to show up make my case about, my background and what I thought we needed to be doing differently and some helpful hints on how to do it. And then apparently I sold it well, because then they picked me as the VP candidate.
You made an interesting observation that this was your meaning. Like MS helped you find your meaning, which is like a spiritual thing that we talk about here on Gracearchy. So you teed it up well.
Yeah, in fact, I'd like to maybe go just one step even further back. Tell me about the diagnosis itself. What is MS, and how did you find out? And like, go if you could, please go back into that time.
Sure. So multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease, a neurodegenerative autoimmune disease. And what that means is that my immune system, all autoimmunity is your immune system not working correctly and thinking that some part or parts of your body are a threat, or something that they need to attack. With multiple sclerosis, the thing that it thinks is the threat is your brain and your central nervous system. Not important stuff. And so the symptoms for MS are anything your brain affects. So pretty much anything. It can affect your cognition. It can affect your motor skills. It can affect everything, like every aspect, your autonomic system. It can affect pretty much everything. And for me, it's mostly been sensory stuff. So I first realized I had MS, my first clue that I might have MS. I woke up and the right side, like when you wake up from falling asleep, and depending on how you were laying, part of your arm or your shoulder or your leg or something has fallen asleep. Well, I had that kind of tingly feeling, but it didn't go away. And it was pretty much from here down and on my right side. And it just kept slowly getting worse. And fast forward a couple weeks later, I finally got an MRI. I was almost completely numb at that point on my right side and having difficulty walking because of the lack of feedback in my foot. And they said, yeah, it looks like you may have MS. That started a journey of 2 years before official diagnosis, because MS requires a lot of other things being ruled out. It also requires you getting a second exacerbation or flare up. And so after that second one, and then from there, every about month and a half to 2 months, I was having an attack. And it went from probably being MS to being a very aggressive case of MS in a relatively short period of time.
And yet you undertake to go ahead and run for vice president, which is a fairly dynamic, moving about, getting out in the public. You had a bus tour that you had to go on. So how does someone in your condition, and when I've been around you too, you've been, you're in good shape, you're very dynamic.
Yep.
How do you manage that? How do you manage to be that person?
So I have been in remission since August of 2017. So this will be this will be my 6th year of being in remission. And what remission means is both no new activity on my MRI, no new lesions, no atrophy of the brain, nothing like that, and either no new symptoms or a recession of your existing symptoms. And that's what I've had. I've had no new activity, and my symptoms have been slowly getting better, actually. So there are some that have stayed about the same. And I'm not sure if it's so subtle. I'm not sure if it's gotten better or I've just gotten used to it over time. But there are some that have completely gone away. I used to get a lot of sensory stuff around my rib cage. All that's gone away. I used to deal with dizzy spells and things like that. I don't really deal with that anymore. So I'm a success case because not only did I get on it's funny, they call it a DMT, which is a disease modifying treatment. Of course, we all think differently when we hear that, but they had me on a good DMT, but also I completely changed my lifestyle. Not only diet and exercise, supplementation, meditation, mindfulness, stress reduction, but a big part of that, I kept hearing other people that were, MS survivors or people that live with MS, and they were all saying the same thing. The most important thing is seek your purpose, find what's fulfilling to you. And that really led me on this journey. Another thing that happened was I love how Bill just comes in when he feels like it. And then he leaves. He comes in, he says, Spike, I got a question for you. I'm going to go now. I don't even care what the answer is. I just want you to know that this is my question for you. The audience will like this. I got to go. But so another thing that happened was shortly after my diagnosis, which at that point was a relief. I like both of you had just left. Now it's just me. Hey, everyone. Spike Cohen here at the Gracearchy with Spike Cohen. You can tell this is my show because of this fancy church backdrop. Anyway, you guys are great. This is a really good dynamic thing happening. I'm probably going to stop looking at the screen. I'm going to go back to just listening to this show, which has served me very well up until now. So anyway, so the doctor, after this relief of saying, okay, I know I have MS, and now we're going to find the treatment and everything. And so they sit me down and they say, yeah, the purpose of your MS treatment is to reduce or slow down the progression of your MS so that it's not much different than just the typical aging process where we kind of slowly decline until we're no longer here. And that was supposed to make me feel better. That hit me like a ton of freaking bricks because I had spent the last 2 years, all I thought about was MS. Do I have MS? Do I not have MS? If I don't have MS, what else do I have? What am I going to do to deal with this? And, how am I going, what are things that I can do to try to get ahead of this? Do I need to, update my will? Everything you would think of when faced with the possibility that you may die a lot sooner than you thought. And that even before then, because MS doesn't really kill you immediately, but before then you might lose your abilities and powers of attorney, like all these things. And they were telling me in that moment, none of this matters. You have MS, you don't have MS, you're in perfect health, you're going to live to be 120. Then you won't be here. And even before you aren't here, you'll decline because we age and we die. Very cheery subject, by the way. But that hit me with something that I needed and had needed for quite some time. The realization that, yeah, we're not always going to be here. And what matters is, what are we leaving behind? Yes, how are we living in the moment? How are we fulfilling ourselves and everything else? But what are we leaving behind? Because 200 years from now, no one we know will be alive. What did we leave behind? Was the world a better place because we were here? Was it a worse place because we were here? Did it even matter that we were here? And up until that point, all I had focused on was making money. And I'm glad I did that because it's put me in a position where I can now seek fulfillment, not have to worry as much about money. But it wasn't fulfilling me. And had I continued doing that, I would have continued being sick and miserable and really, really overweight. I was like 100 pounds overweight. And not be able to truly be the husband that my wife deserves, not truly be able to be the loved one that my loved ones deserve, and not be able to help others and to share such an incredible message of liberty that we have. So as tough as it is to say this, yeah, MS on multiple fronts it allowed me to reclaim my life, and I now live a healthier, happier, and more fulfilled life than at any other point in my life. Including before I had MS.
What is the importance of meaning? Like, why would it matter what happens after you're gone? And I ask this question on two levels. I want to ask it to younger Spike because I want to know, is it important to the people that we're talking to right now, particularly if they are younger, to have a priority of making money and starting to plan? Like, there's a certain, should we be telling somebody who's 21 years old, just follow your bliss? Like, is that really the best advice to give them? But then, you're coming into a different phase of life now and you've had this awakening. What then is the meaning? So like, kind of lay out that life path a little bit from your perspective.
Sure. So what I would say to someone who hasn't already built a financial nest egg like I did, what I would say to them is, this is your time, whatever. And it really doesn't matter how old you are to take this advice. Like, this is still good advice. If you're 12 or 102, it doesn't matter. I would focus on finding why you believe you should be here. What is your purpose? What is fulfilling to you? And that means stripping away a lot of stuff that was put on you even before you were able to communicate or talk, even before you were born, when your parents, possibly even before you were conceived. In my case, my parents were making plans for me before they ever conceived me. And the thing is, the reality is you have to be you. And so a lot of the process is stripping away your somebody suit, the suit that you've been given by other people. This is who you are. This is what you do. This is what you're about. And finding what is the most fulfilling, what is your fulfillment. And then once you find that, then the step is, that's the fun part, is finding a way to be able to earn a living and be able to live off of that. And earn a living is subjective. It could mean, are my bills paid? Do I have enough money in case of an emergency? Can I make ends meet? For me, it's a little bit more. It's, am I able to have a financial legacy to leave behind? Can I live very comfortably? Can I not have to worry about, can money for the most part not be an object, so that I don't have to worry about that? So for me, it was that. But yeah, I think that people need to focus first and foremost on fulfillment, and then assuming that they aren't, either already independently wealthy or a trust fund baby or something like that, then figure out, how can I monetize this? How can this be a way to a way for me to be successful, or how can I be successful financially while still being able to fulfill this? And if you can do that, and if you can game your life in such a way that you're fulfilling both of those things, you'll be excited to wake up every day.
May I ask a question about this? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
your story is really moving to me. I lost a relative to MS last year. Um, so much of the stories that we tell ourselves are, as you said, sort of planned in advance for us.
Yep.
And overcoming all those stories is sometimes a huge burden to find your actual meaning in life. And I think MS, as you said, was a gift that sort of stripped all of that away and let
Forced
you,
me to look at it. Yeah.
yeah, forced you into facing that stuff. What would you say, or what would you advise someone who's like in their 20s now, dealing with a whole long litany of stuff that's been their story, both planned and unplanned, and is trying to find a way to put the rudder in the water and go in a direction that has meaning for them?
Yeah, so I think if I had to just tell them one single thing, it's that I remember the stereotypical question that a guidance counselor used to ask in school. If money wasn't an object, what would you? It's a question I asked myself when I was in the middle of this MS journey of trying to figure out how to reclaim my life, reclaim my health, and all of that. And the question was, if money wasn't an object, or in my case, since money's not really an object, I'm not a billionaire or anything like that, but like, I don't have to worry about making ends meet. And since that's the case, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? And my answer for that, which I did for a better part of a few weeks, was sleep. I was so exhausted from decades of doing what I was to chase paper, and then also dealing with all the MS stuff. I spent most of my time resting and like relaxing and all of that stuff. Now, if you want to fast forward past that, if you're asking yourself in this moment of frustration and everything else, you might say, if I didn't want to do anything, then I would sleep. If I didn't have to do anything, I'd sleep, or I would go and party and all that. Okay, great. None of that is fulfillment. Those are just filling an immediate need that you have. You have to really drill down. What would you do? What would be the reason that you would wake up? What would be the thing that would make you want to continue striving and continue moving forward? What would be the thing that excited you more than anything if you didn't have to worry about the money? And this is going to be a tough question for some people, because a lot of people, they use success as a coping mechanism, or striving for money and success as a coping mechanism for the fact that they don't know what it is they're here for. They don't know what it is they want to do. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't even know if they have a purpose. And so a convenient foil is to just constantly focus on, I'm going to try to make money, I'm going to try to make ends meet, I'm going to try to do all that. And they don't do that search. So it can be difficult for people, but you can spend some time on it, think about it, meditate on it. There's all sorts of resources out there about how you can discover your purpose, and techniques you can use to learn things and all of that. And that'll go a long way to doing it. But it's something you have to do. It may be difficult in the short term, but in the long term, I wake up excited. I wake up challenged. I wake up feeling like, today is a new day to fulfill my purpose and my destiny. And even with all the stressors of running a nonprofit and, future questions of what I'm going to do and everything else, all of that, when I wake up, I could not be more excited about the future. And it's because I know I'm living in my purpose.
Okay. So what is your meaning? What is Spike Cohen's purpose? What did you end up settling on? Because it drove the moment here. I mean, you have finally arrived on Gracearchy. So there was some decision that you made that was extra good and described your purpose, right? What is that? Who are you?
So I believe my purpose is to help people and to help them understand how we got in a situation where they needed help in the first place. So help their immediate need, whether that's a need for a hand up, whether that's a need for help to get accountability for people that are harming them in government, to get justice and to get accountability for the people who did it to them, whether it's whatever kind of help someone needs, but also to demonstrate that very often the situation they're in where they needed help in the first place is being created because we live in a system or are forced into a system that doesn't respect our autonomy, doesn't respect our dignity or our individuality or our self-ownership or any of that stuff. And it imposes things on us and has no clear reason to provide value for what it imposes on us. And so that's how I am working to grow the liberty movement, and also to help people in the process, not wait for some, future utopian moment when libertarians have taken over the world and left everyone alone, but helping people now who need help now, and actually building connections with people now and a network now to be able to grow that movement and to be able to help even more people.
I had the privilege of working with Harry Brown. I was his press secretary in his second campaign in 2000. And he was reflecting on what it was that he was doing. And he had written a book called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And it was very much about how you broke free of these traps and really did find your own happiness. And he came away saying, you know what, a lot of people, when you run for this office, they think that everything is about, trying to win. You're going to be the winner. And if you don't get that, somehow you failed. But he took stock of some of the things that he had experienced or had happened to him along the way. And I'm noticing that you chose to say, not that you were going to change the country. I didn't hear you say that. What I heard you say is you were going to help people. So that sounds to me like there's an orientation towards present situations, real live people that you want to impact their trajectory.
Yep. And a big part of that came with my MS diagnosis and the realization of what that entailed. So I was always, and I still am, I tend to be a horizon person. I tend to be forward thinking. I have, generally speaking, a pretty low time preference. I have a higher value preference. I want to build towards a great future. And I did that with money. And I convinced myself that that's what I was doing with my life. I convinced myself I'm denying myself in the now so that I can enjoy more in the future. But what I wasn't factoring in was the future that I was looking at was when I was like in my 60s, 70s, 80s. Why would I wait to withhold any fulfillment or purpose, or even looking for fulfillment or purpose in myself, until I was towards the end of my life? Why would I do that? What was the purpose of that? And the reason was because I was comfortable and I didn't want to have to face what my, that immediate stressor of trying to figure out what my purpose was. So I'll just put it off till later. And it took a diagnosis of an incurable autoimmune neurodegenerative disorder that could greatly accelerate that reality into aging, for lack of a better word, a lot more quickly, to force myself to look at that. The reality is, when I was at my worst with my MS, and if someone had come up to me and told me that there were some great innovations, which there are great innovations happening in treatment for MS, both on the holistic side and on the pharmaceutical side, the medical side. If someone had told me, I have great news for you, we're within 20, maybe 15, 20 years of a cure for MS, I would have said, that's great. I'm hurting now. I'm facing being in a wheelchair now. I'm facing not being able to see or to speak or to use my hands correctly now. I'm facing all these weird sensations that scare me every moment of my life now. I'm facing not wanting to get out of bed because as soon as I wake up, I start feeling all this weird stuff now. How can you help me now? And so while we do need to look to the future, and while it's important to work on building a legacy and building things that take longer to build, there are people right now who need help. And we have solutions to help them. And often that solution is just helping them. So why would we not also focus on that? And if part of our goal is to build a liberty movement, well, this is us working voluntarily and helping each other and demonstrating our respect for each other's dignity and their autonomy and our desire for people to be able to live to their highest iteration possible for them. What a perfect way to do that, and do that to also grow the liberty movement and bring people into it, to show that our way is all about helping people, and that very often we're having to undo the consequences of other people's ideas of how to deal with things. So it all synergizes well, and it's a perfect balance of helping people's immediate needs now and also building a greater future.
So I like how you laid that all out, but I'd like to go like one step, maybe a little bit underneath that.
Sure.
If you're going to help people, you could have done it in any number of ways.
Mm-hmm.
You were attracted to doing something socially, and you were attracted to doing something about the way we interact with each other as human beings, and you stepped into this libertarian philosophy. So first, what is your attraction to the libertarian philosophy? I've got to follow up on this, but what is your fundamental attraction to it?
My fundamental attraction comes from a moral and ethical framework. The idea that it just intuitively makes sense that we shouldn't be hurting people. We shouldn't be ordering people around. We shouldn't be taking from people. We shouldn't be doing things to people without their consent. Not only is it morally and ethically wrong, but it just doesn't work. It removes all of the incentives and feedback mechanisms that allow us to learn and to grow and to come up with better ideas, because there is no feedback mechanism. There is no opportunity to learn. No one is choosing whether or not to go with our plan. They're doing it because we told them to. So it removes accountability. It removes the ability to learn. It removes the ability for there to be different competing ways of doing things. It removes all of that. But the fundamental thing is that it just isn't right. It's not the way people should interact with each other.
So why, if you've got a mission to help other people, why libertarianism and not some other form of activity? All of which would be legitimate, but why were you attracted to this slice of the problem?
As opposed to like doing like charitable work or something
Charitable
like
work
that?
might be, yeah.
Okay. Well, so actually charitable work is a part of what we do with You
Okay.
at Power and what I do personally with my life. So I don't, the way I see it is I do many, many different things. And I do the things that connect, that I guess reverberate or connect the most with me, the things that I feel I'm best
Yeah,
at
and I'm
and can
trying
be
to
the best,
get at
most
like
help.
that thing. What is it that connects with you? Why did you become, instead of, the head of like I don't know, some other type of charity, right? Why did you
Okay.
become involved in one that's dealing with the social issues and their impacts on human beings? The things that you just described a moment ago. What was it
Because
that's really draws spike?
okay, yeah, because I look at things as systems, and yes, you can put a Band-Aid on something. In fact, this was actually something I learned with MS. Yeah, there are things you can do immediately to deal with MS symptoms, but if you don't address the root cause of what's causing MS, autoimmune reactions, inflammation, and things like that, then you might actually be making things worse by hiding the symptoms that are letting you know something is wrong and allowing it to continue to fester and progress. I look at the social questions the same way. Yes, we can apply those Band-Aids and they can be helpful for people right now. But if we aren't showing the root cause of what's causing these problems or making these problems worse, and showing a better way to do things where these problems either go away or are greatly ameliorated, or we're just better empowered to be able to deal with them, then we're not truly long-term helping people. We're helping people's immediate needs, which may backfire. If that's all we're doing, it may actually backfire and lead to things getting worse because we're dealing with people's immediate, for lack of a better word, symptoms or side effects of the system that we live under. So, the best way to help people long-term is to voluntarily work on fixing the systemic problems that are leading to the conditions of these things happening in the first place.
Okay. So the way that we go about solving problems actually keeps us from really solving them. And you're attracted.
It can.
Amen.
Yeah, and you're attracted to making sure that there's actually a real long-term fix, that the real, root issues are being dealt with.
Yes, I think it was Thomas Sowell that said, and I'm going to butcher this quote, and it might not even been him who said it, but someone said, very smart person once said that there are no such things as true solutions. There are only trade-offs. And so what we have to do is figure out what are the best set of positive and negative trade-offs in any given thing that lead us to the best net positive result. And that's the way I look at this, is we have the best trade-offs. Like the way that that liberty works, the way that respecting people's individual human autonomy and dignity and so forth, the way that non-aggression works, the way that all of that works, it works best because any of it is largely positive trade-offs, And most of the, I guess what you would call negative trade-offs are just the reality of the human condition. The fact that you're not going to get rid of greed, you're not going to get rid of disease, you're not going to get rid of unfair circumstances. But if you empower and allow people to determine for themselves and work voluntarily with others to determine and come up with solutions to the problems that they face, you're going to live in the best society that is humanly possible. And that truly helps people long term. Just fixing their immediate problems is sometimes necessary and can be helpful. But if that's all you're doing, then you may actually be masking the results of a bad thing that allows it to continue to become worse.
Can I play a devil's advocate on a question here?
Well, can I just
Absolutely,
jump in and say one thing, Bill? He just proved he has been listening to the show. He just quoted Thomas Sowell, and we did that in the DeMar Hamlin episode.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. So Spike, we now thank you for verifying you've passed your Gracearchy comprehension exam.
But that I don't watch it because I came in here with some like intergalactic background, and meanwhile it's we're in the Vatican. We're all in different rooms of the Vatican.
All right, go. I'm sorry,
man.
Go ahead.
No. That was well said. So, devil's advocate.
Which part of that was well said? I don't feel like what I just said was well said, but I appreciate your enthusiasm. Thank you.
Oh gosh. Okay. Thoughts, collecting, refocus.
I appreciate that.
But I sent people to Washington, D.C. to fix these problems.
Yes.
Right.
And thank you for that. I actually never thought of that. And I think you're right, actually. We may not even want to air this now, to tell you the truth. No. So here's the thing. The political system is the great fiction by which we acknowledge that we cannot hurt each other. I can't rob you. I can't assault you. I can't threaten to kill you. I can't do any of these things.
Sure.
But I can, and we can, empower people to do all of that en masse to all of us, and actually tell them or vote for people who promise to do it the way that we would do it if we could, but we can't, because that's terrible and no one should ever do that. That's the political system. It is inherently flawed. And whether you're talking a democratic way of choosing, whether you're talking just having an autocrat who claims authority and threatens anyone who tries to depose him, any of those things are just different ways of someone saying, I'm going to tell you how to live your life, and that's the best arrangement. And the idea, particularly of the democratic model or the representative model of saying, I hired someone to deal with this, really what you're saying is, I hired someone who sold me the best line and who could not possibly know as well as me and every other person on in this country or in this city or whatever their presumed jurisdiction is. They couldn't possibly know what we need as well as we can. And I've empowered this person with pretty much any amount of money they need, any amount of authority they need, and basically very little to no accountability. And that should definitely work out in my favor, even though it just keeps not working out in my favor, but it's bound to work. We just haven't found the right person.
I got to vote hard enough.
I got to vote harder.
Yeah, vote harder.
So a theme begins to emerge here, and I'm going to take a stab at something. You seem to have expressed a form of, I would say, existentialism, right? I'm pondering my own death. My death becomes very present to me. I begin to realize I have a limited amount of time, and I start to take stock of what I'm going to do. And I begin making decisions based on my death. I begin making decisions about meaning and purpose based on my death. Now, this could go a lot of different ways, and this is what I want to give you the opportunity to do. Let's call this a philosophical or theological moment. On that kind of basis, am I wrong in my speculation? Is there some other kind of spiritual components in there? How do you kind of make sense of the universe and your role in it here? You're trying to give meaning back to the universe. How does that all? What's the bigger picture?
So I'll give a little bit of history here. I was raised in a Messianic Jewish household, and Messianic Jews are Jews who believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. So we're basically Jewish Christians. Another term that's used is first century Christians, because the original Christians were just Jews who followed Christ and believed that he was Messiah. So that's my background. So I came from a very Abrahamic Messianic faith background. Over time, I came to become disillusioned with that and not believe that that was the correct interpretation. And so the default, as with most Westerners, was to go into the second monotheistic system, which is of course atheism. And so I became, and of course the monotheism there is nothing. You are the product of nothing. You're still a fluke, and it's still not. We're not 100% sure why you're here, and it's kind of.
Hold on, I gotta pull it
That was
together.
That was good. That was good.
The second monotheistic. Can you just sort of like unpack that a little bit?
Yes, the 18th century, the starting in the 18th and 19th century Western monotheism of nothing, which was really the product of people who lived under either Catholic or Protestant interpretations of this very angry guy up in the sky who was going to strike you down the moment you even thought something wrong. And so the best way to deal with that was in your mind to kill it and say, actually, there's nothing here. You're still
God
a fluke,
dead,
right? God is dead or never existed. I've killed him in my mind. There is no reason for this. We are these a completely purposeless world that has no reason for its existence whatsoever, and has for some reason, this tree, for lack of a better word, has created us, the fruit, that are constantly seeking purpose and meaning in all things. This completely uncaring world that doesn't care about anything and has created, for some reason, these incredibly hyper emotional beings for absolutely no reason. Also, it's still kind of unfortunate, and we were kind of a mistake borrowing to the Genesis story, but not with the God part, just the mistake part. And of course, removing any possibility for any kind of reclaiming your life, or any kind of you can't. There's no restitution. There's no redemption. You can't be forgiven because no one can forgive you. It's just a bad thing, and you should feel bad about it. And so that was what I believed for a while, and it was a very cheery belief. And then I came to realize that there obviously has to be a purpose to this. Something, someone, whatever you want to call it, had to have created this, and there had to have been some reason for it. And the piece that I found with that, after doing a lot of reading and a lot of listening and a lot of listening to your show, of course, and all of this, has been the piece that I've made is that I believe, if you realize, well, I'm going to focus on things that we don't have to believe that we know are true. So in your body are trillions of other living things, like trillions of them. With each few years, we discover more and more things that are in your body. But we could just focus on your gut microbiome. There are hundreds of billions or trillions of gut microbiome. And they are living things. They have a purpose. They are, in their very short lifespan, doing all sorts of incredible things. And if you zoomed in, it would look like wars and genocides. And I mean, just the most, brutal thing that you ever saw. And you look at this and say, this clearly has no purpose. What a horrific thing. They exist this fleetingly short period of time, and they're struggling to live, and then they're gone. But if you zoom out, you see that they're part of a digestive system that allows us to live and to thrive and to be. And that if it wasn't for them being there, then none of this could be. We are effectively their universe. Now, here's the thing. They have neither the perceptive nor cognitive ability to ever be able to perceive or see or understand the greater thing that they're a part of. And even though we can see them, and even though we know exactly what they're about, and we can even do things to influence them. I take all these probiotics, and that helps make sure that only the good ones are there and all the bad ones are gone or flushed away or whatever. But I have no ability to bridge that gap between my perception and cognitive ability and articulative ability and theirs. So I cannot tell them what they're a part of. And so my belief is that we are, I think it's manifestly, demonstrably true, downright axiomatic, that we are a part of something greater than ourselves. But I believe that we don't have the ability to see or understand what it is, and whatever it is has no ability to be able to share that with us. And if there's, so far, I've yet to come up with find a religion or theism other than, I guess, agnosticism, but one that specifically frames it that way. Which I hope doesn't mean I created a new religion. I just pray to God someone actually already came up with this, and we can have a name for it, and I could say I'm a that, but I haven't found it yet.
So can I make the analogy that politics is the gut biome of the human civilization?
It's the pathogenic. Yes, it's the harmful bacteria pathogen that we eat lots of kimchi to try to get rid of.
And we do have to get rid of it. I'd like to talk about the future a little bit. You ran for president, or vice president, and I'm sure at some moment it crossed your mind that there was the slimmest of chances, a lottery chance to win the whole thing.
Yes.
And so you've just gone through this incredible exploration of your own journey and who you are and kind of what makes you spiritually tick. But where I want to bring the plane in to land is to talk about now how this connects. You want to go out and change, see some change happen in the world, and you want to help real people. And you've begun doing this work. So I want you to, in the most spiritual way, like you just laid out a pretty robust philosophical view there, in the most spiritual way possible, Spike. I want you to describe the work you're doing at You Are the Power right now. I want you to do something, and I'm very serious about this. I want you to do this in a way that you've never done it before. I'm really throwing a tough pitch at you here. You do TV interviews, and so I know what this is like. You go on and there's a certain set of sound bites and things that you're used to saying, and you reach into the kit. You're not allowed to use any of those right now. I want you to talk from the heart. I want you to talk from that sense of spirit, and I want you to talk about the manifest meaning of You Are the Power.
Absolutely. So the meaning of the actual phrase, before we even get into the organization, I believe that the phrase "You Are the Power," the way that I'm using it and the way that we use it, has an inherently spiritual and existential meaning to it. A lot of people, most people, the vast majority of people, have no real understanding of just how much power they have, how much agency they have, how much better position they are to make decisions for themselves they have. And it's because there's this sort of, I'm going to end up sounding like Marianne Williamson. There's this kind of psychic attack on us, like from before we can even form words and our brains are at that early stages of development. We are being told that presumed authority is not to be questioned and that these people know better than you. And you're really just, you're a cog in this machine and you just, keep your lot. And the best you can do is agitate for a little bit more of the scraps from the table that they've taken from you. And that, you want to talk about a spiritual attack, telling someone that they're little more than some cog in a machine, that they don't have any individual agency, that they're not really that smart and they really shouldn't be listening to their own intuition on things or their own conscience on things. And they certainly shouldn't be questioning things. That attacks people on a spiritual and an existential level. And so even just letting people know, the power lies in you. Government power isn't real. It's really just what we're willing to tolerate. And they know that. And that's why they're always fidgeting on the edges with it, is because they realize the second we say we don't want to participate anymore, we don't want to comply anymore, we're going to do our own thing. And enough of us are doing it where you can't stop all of us. And that really ends the whole thing. Or at the very least, it forces them to correct and be more responsive to your concerns and your needs and what matters to you. And so just the message of You Are the Power itself, I think inherently has a spiritual tone to it, or spiritual aspect to it. The work that we are doing, I'll tell you, I was recently in Gastonia, North Carolina, and it was for a charitable thing. We've been working with a pastor who they're named Pastor Moses Colbert, who runs the only homeless shelter in Gastonia. And for the better part of a year, they forced him to shut it down, citing zoning concerns, because there is no zoning for a homeless shelter. And as a result, dozens of homeless people died from a combination of exposure to the elements during the colder months and overdoses to cope with the fact that they didn't have a shelter, a place to put their head down at night. And which come to find out that it was because the city was angling for federal money to deal with the homelessness problem. And if some guy's fixing the homelessness problem without spending any taxpayer money, they're not going to get that federal money. So they shows where their concern is.
But
the point of
by
that
the way,
is,
I just want people to understand the story, Bill. We go over this all the time. The story Spike just told. We talked about the in Florida pouring bleach on the sandwiches, right?
Yes.
This is not, we talked about in Cleveland, how they shut down, they wouldn't let a church take in the homelessness unless they gave up their church status and became a shelter with all the different expenses that were going to come with that. And this is all done ostensibly for their protection. There's an evil at work here. And it's literally evil. right?
And it's
Because some people's
and
pockets are not getting lined correctly, and some people are not getting certain levels of status. We are really going to cast real, live, vulnerable human beings into an abyss.
it's
So I
not
don't want that point lost. I mean, this, to me, when you say
no.
you're helping people, like, this is, politicians claim this thing all the time, and it's not legitimate. It's actually the opposite. And to me, this is a large motivating spiritual factor to get involved. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to
No,
miss. This is like every state. There's a story like this. There's at least
oh,
one story like this in every state, every major city.
I was going to say almost every city and pretty much every county has at least one story like this, where people are expressly being harmed in order to grow the power, money, or authority of someone in that area. And what's wild is it's so casual how they do it. They don't get together and go, "How can we harm the homeless and make millions of dollars?" And cynical, evil laughter. They get together in county board or city council meetings, and it's very humdrum. And if you're not paying attention to what they're saying, you might fall asleep. It's very boring. There's no activity to indicate that people's lives are about to be ruined. And that's what they're doing. And they do it casually. And they do it because they can, and because of that presumption of authority. But so we're in Gastonia, and thankfully we were able to put enough public pressure on the city council that they backed off and they let Pastor Moses reopen his homeless shelter. And so we've been helping, You Are the Power has been helping with charity drives and with getting volunteers to come out and help. We got 2 single wide trailers donated that are going to be used for a combination of educational facilities and flex shelters during like periods of heavy extreme weather or like very cold weather and things like that. And so when I was up there, what struck me was, even though I've done a lot of work with the homeless before, and I've done a lot of work with charity before, growing up and even in my adult life, but it's very easy to, when you don't know someone personally, they look at them as an abstraction: the homeless, the poor, any aspect of that. When I was there and I'm meeting the actual individuals who are actually being helped by the direct action that we're doing and that Pastor Moses is doing, and literally something as simple as just serving, I was the guy who was serving the lasagna at the luncheon that we were doing, and then talking with them afterwards and hearing their stories and watching them go from coming in and being cold, because it was cold out, but also being kind of, skeptical. They didn't know us yet. They knew Pastor Moses, but not the rest of us. And in a very short period of time, seeing them open up, tell us all sorts of stuff that I'm not sure I'd be comfortable going that deep into telling my backstory to someone I just met, and just laying it all out there. And, sometimes with tears in their eyes, thanking us and hearing about the things that were going to be available to them with the new trailer and all this stuff. I realized we weren't just helping people's physical needs. We were helping their spiritual needs. We were helping their need and realize. And I'm sure if I'm waking up and saying, "Why am I here?" in my level of comfort, in my level, when I was, having those kinds of questions, I was living a comfortable life. I had a loving wife. I had, family who loved me. I had been sober for many years at that point. We didn't get into it, but I used to be a drug addict, and I've been clean for many years. It'll be 17 years this year, but during that time I had been sober for a few years. So on paper, everything should be fine. If I'm wondering what the purpose of my life is, someone who's dealing with drug addiction or mental health issues, who doesn't have a home, who may not have whose family may not be speaking with them, who may have some terrible trauma from all sorts of things they've seen and experienced and been a part of. Imagine what they're wondering. So to be able to help them with even just the basic need of food today, and to tell them that we're also working on helping them with other things and fixing the systemic problems that led to them being put in that position in the first place, and helping them to be able to help themselves through education and job training and all of those things, that's spiritual fixing that's happening there as well. That's someone who can go on to do even more stuff than I'm doing right now, where they would have otherwise, if someone hadn't shown them that they actually mattered to someone, they wouldn't have done any of that. They might have died a very early and painful death. The biggest thing that we're doing with not just the phrase "You Are the Power," But the work that You Are the Power is doing is we're showing people that someone actually cares about them and that they actually matter. And not you matter as some political slogan, but you matter, and here's what we're doing to demonstrate that you matter. And I can't think of anything more spiritually healing and helpful than that.
All right, practical brass tacks. What exactly is You Are the Power functionally? What are you guys doing, and how can people get involved?
Sure. So we are a 501c4 nonprofit. We are actually building a charitable component that'll be a 501c3 called the You Are the Power Foundation, but that's still in development. But we are a 501c4, and what we do is we find, or you typically have brought to us, examples of people who need help. And that usually falls either under a charitable need or what we call like a citizens lobbying need. So like I'll give one example, and I'll go through the brass tacks of how we helped with this example. So there was a lady in Indiana whose home burned down. And while she was in the process of going, for anyone who's been through an insurance claim of any kind, it can take months. This was going to take over a year to get the contractors and deal with the claim and everything else. And during that time where she and her family did not have a home, the insurance company gave her a RV or Four Seasons home to live in temporarily, perfectly safe to live in all year long. Certainly not ideal, but it was a place to live while they got it fixed. Zoning board found out about it in her county and started issuing her letters, fining her thousands of dollars every day because she had 2 residences. One of those residences was a foundation with the charred remains of a home on it. The home had been completely burned down. But that was technically 2 residences. And because they wanted to steal her property, they said that they were going to continue fining her hundreds of dollars a day or thousands of dollars a day until she either came into compliance by not having either the RV or the burned up house, or just leaving and letting them take the property. So You Are the Power found out about it, and we immediately began our first step, which is to alert the public. And we do that through social media swarming. We do that through getting in touch with local media and regional media, our contacts in national media and podcasts and things like that, to get it out there so people know this is even happening. Now, if we had to, the next step would have been to organize locally, to start creating events for people to show up to rally around this family and to say this isn't right and the zoning board needs to back off, showing up to their meetings, and all of that stuff that we do, the citizen lobbying aspect that we do to get politicians to back off and do what the people want them to do. We didn't actually have to do that because by the time we were putting it out there, the zoning board backed off. We were able to help raise enough money for her to hire an attorney who took them to court so that this will never happen again. And the judge actually ruled that what they did was illegal. So this should never happen again, at least in that county. We also helped organize for people to donate goods for her to be able to, because when you're living in an RV, you can't cook for yourself. There's not a kitchen to speak of. So members of the community started coming and bringing her baked goods and things that to help kind of warm up the home there and make it more homey. Once her home was ready to move into, members of the community came to help her to. She lost everything, to help her to refurnish her home and put things in to make it more of an actual home. And all of that happened as a result of us organizing members of the community to come together to help one of their own, to help someone in their community who needed help. We also helped expose a dire harm that was being done there by a zoning board. And we used it as an opening conversation about the fact that this wasn't just a corrupt zoning board that was the problem. Mm-hmm. This was the fact that the government presumed the authority to tell you what you can and cannot do on your property peacefully, and to even take your property or fine you so much that you can't afford to continue living on your property and you just give it to them because they presume that authority. And that's an example of what You Are the Power does.
And people, what are the roles in terms of getting involved, and how do they go about doing that?
Absolutely. So if you go to youarethepower.net, you can become a member today. Membership is free. We do have sustaining memberships that help pay for the cost of running a nonprofit. Unfortunately, the reality of all things is that you got to have money to pay for it. And so we do welcome any donations you have. But I think most importantly, we'd like you to get involved. We'd like you to be a part of it. And when you join You Are the Power, you get access to members only groups and servers to be able to communicate directly with each other. We get you in touch with your regional organizer. We have a growing number of educational tools available to teach you how to be the most effective activist and how to be able to help people the best that you possibly can, and to spread the message of liberty and make connections in your community. We launched back in May, so we're still in the development process on a lot of this, but we are doing at least something on all of these fronts already. But we do invite you to join us and become a member by going to youarethepower.net. We'd love to have you be a part of it. And we so far have over 2,000 members across it. We have members in all 50 states, and we'd love to have you join us.
I am so
Very
blown
good.
away here. This relationship thing is so beautiful. And You Are the Power does exactly what a lot of believers would say first, which is create a good relationship.
Yes.
That's what Jesus taught. And here we are creating another relationship in the world for You Are the Power, for Spike Cohen, to be able to reach out and perhaps reach somebody who needs to hear right now that help's available, that there's a relationship that they haven't yet tried that they could rely on.
I was taught growing up that the best way to evangelize the gospel was to live your life in such a way that it inspired people to find out what it is that you're doing that makes you so great, that makes your life so fulfilled, that makes you, why are you happy? Why is this person happy all the time? Why is this person helping others all the time? Why is this person so selfless? Why is this person have such fulfillment? Why is this person, excited to live? Why is this person, who I may not even know that well, so interested in me and trying to help me? And of course, the answer is because that is my commission to do so, to help those who are in need and to share the gospel and to share the message of life everlasting. And in many ways, that's what we're doing with You Are the Power. And in fact, we have many Christians, evangelical Christians and other types of Christians that are a part of You Are the Power, who say, this is what, this is my commission, and I'm just applying it in addition to sharing the message of Christ and the gospel. I'm also sharing, as part of that greater message, sharing this message of freedom and respect for individual human dignity and autonomy and all of that stuff. So it works in perfectly. If you want to share a message with someone, a belief system with someone, the very first step to take is to build a relationship. And the very next step to take is to be someone who inspires people to do what you're doing and to join you in what it is you're doing. I'm asked a lot, what is the book libertarians should read to be able to understand libertarianism perfectly and all that? And I'm like, if you're a libertarian, you probably already understand anything that, it's good to read Hayek and von Mises and Rothbard and Spooner and Bastiat and everyone else and Rand and all of that. But if I had to pick a book for libertarians to read, it would be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie, because that lays out how to inspire people to join you. You already know the what, but you need to know the how. How do we bring people to this movement? And a lot of what's said in that book lines up perfectly with the how to evangelize. You evangelize any idea by making connections with people and demonstrating yourself to be someone who cares, who understands, who wants to help them, and who wants to have them join you in the thing that you're doing to help them and others. And that's what we do, and I invite everyone to join us.
As it done, that really resonates for me. I don't know, Jim. I see from your smile that that's probably true for you too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And Spike and I have talked about this before off air, and so I'm glad that he's had a chance to share this. I want to know, Spike, before we go, would you like to take this advantage of the vast audience that we have here to announce your upcoming presidential campaign?
That's going to happen more and more, isn't it? So
I haven't made
the team
any right here. We got Spike.
I was going to say, this team's great because what's cool is, you can take me off screen and say, and Spike's running for president. And then I go and I'm like, it's just me up there. Hey, everyone, I'm running for president. And then one of you comes and says, and the reason he's running is because of this. I'm like, yeah, thanks, Bill. Yeah, and that's why I'm running for. And then Jim comes and goes, and if he gets elected, he's going to do X, Y, and Z. And then you disappear. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, Jim. That's what I'm going to do if I'm right. I haven't made any decisions for 2024. The short answer to that is, or I guess the slightly longer answer to that is, I'm going to do what helps best serve this movement and what best helps serve the needs of people around us. And so if that becomes running for the nomination and running for president, then so be it. If it means staying where I am here and focusing and doubling and tripling down on you are the power, so be it. If it means some combination of those things or something that I haven't even thought of yet, then so be it. My second part of my life post MS has been about opening myself up to opportunities and being open to things happening that I never would have imagined were going to happen. Like, for example, running for vice president. So, we'll see what happens, but wherever I am, I'm going to be doing it to help people and to grow this movement and to bring us as close to freedom as humanly possible.
Spike, thank you. I hope that today's experience was a little different from you, from your normal, typical interview.
Yeah.
Got into some things maybe that you don't normally talk about very much, and that this will be the kind of video you want to share with friends to kind of get to know you a little bit better. I appreciate you opening up and sharing all this with us. We're, Gracearchy for us means government by grace, right? Most people want some form of government. They want help with various things, but does it have to be of the manipulative, coercive, theft-based version, or can it be something that they've chosen, or they're meeting one another and they're forming bonds of relationship and building a real community, where they're even, in the case of Grace, going that one extra step further, where they're trying to understand people who are different from them and what makes them tick and why is it that you're holding this view right now. So that's kind of the vision that we're throwing out here, and I appreciate you sharing of yourself today.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm happy to be a part of this. And now I got this sick, I think, Catholic church background. I assume
it does look
Orthodox.
pretty Catholic.
It's looking pretty Catholic.
There's some saints back there or something.
Saints. I got saint. I'm gonna have to now find out what I took this from.
Yeah.
It was a Google image search, but I got this really sweet background I can use for religious thing. Probably just Christian things. I don't think I walk into a Muslim discussion with this, but I think it's we all grew here is what I'm saying. And I'm happy that you guys are doing this. I think that we should be talking about the spiritual aspect of this. We get caught up in policy, we get caught up in the material aspect of it, but the reality is we're all a bunch of human beings trying to figure this out. And the sooner we make those connections, the sooner we can get where we're going. So thank you guys for being a part of that, and thank you for having me here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. And Bill, I want to just echo what Spike said. He's right. These conversations have to occur. It's an important part of people's existence, their quest for meaning. And I think an important part of my personal meaning, and the reason that I'm motivated to do this, is that empathy matters. I want people to understand the role of empathy. I'm just passionate about that. And so I show up here to do this with you. And so this has been a lot of fun, but it's also been profoundly interesting to me too. So I want to thank Spike for being here, and for everyone for listening to Gracearchy.